Tonight on The Come Up, I'll be chatting with my friend, Katie Porter. Wow. Hello, 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 people of the world. Welcome to The Come Up. That's what this is. It's The Come Up. You're in my new closet studio thing. Just so you know, many people have already made the joke. Yes, it is ironic that I have found my way back into the closet, but it's for a worthy cause, I think. I think it's good to, if your closet has good sound, like use it. I don't know. That feels like a clause to going back in the closet. Hey folks, this show's super fun. We're gonna have fun. Katie's here. I'm super excited, but a lot's happening right now. So I feel like I just gotta say something like real quick. So George Floyd, a man in Minneapolis, was attacked and murdered by police officers. And I'm really tired of it, y'all. Like, how does this keep happening? As I think about this, I think back, and 6 years ago, in the summer, I was stage managing a show about police brutality. 3 years ago in the summer, I was in Minneapolis when the Philando Castile murder verdict came down. So like, how is it that over this number of years, when we're readily able to access things and have these conversations, that this keeps happening, and everyone seems just as shocked every time, and they're like, "Oh, it's just what can we do?" And then things like this happen. So I was just before I came on, I was reading the news, and I saw this post from Deadline regarding all the stuff with Gabrielle Union. Remember, Gabrielle Union made the accusations at America's Got Talent about racism in both the casting and also comments about her hair backstage. And they did their investigation and they proved that everything was fine. But they included this quote, which I thought was very interesting. "While the investigation has demonstrated an overall culture of diversity, it has also highlighted some areas in which reporting processes could be improved." Now, here's my question. If everything is fine at your organization, then why is there even an investigation? Like, isn't that the first question? Like, I feel like we always have this conversation. People are like, "Oh, well, we did a thorough investigation of how racist you said we were, and we proved that we're not." And that makes no sense. So white folks, when you keep asking, "What can I do? What next?" Just realize that the way that y'all talk and the systems that have been created to have these conversations either backdoor or in front of everyone, we see it happening. And you also see it happening, but you realize that it's for your benefit in a lot of cases. And that's cool. Benefits are great. We like benefits. These unemployment benefits are great right now. It's the only way I'm really saving my life. But what we need to do with those benefits, if we can, is use them to lift up and empower others, and promote conversations that enact actual change, and not get stuck in this cycle of always being shocked at what we know is not just the history of the last 6 years, but also the history of this nation. So, that being said, to a less important note, but also relevant note, I have Bell's palsy right now. So only half of my face is working. And this eye is a little drippy. So if you see it, don't be concerned. It's okay. I'm actually learned this is a very common disease. A lot of people have had it. I'm in actually some really great company with some fantastic folks that have had Bell's palsy. And it's actually just a sign that my career can only go up from here. That list includes Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber. That also includes George Clooney. If you do not believe me, here's a picture of George Clooney with Bell's palsy. And then here is Sylvester Stallone, who, as I was looking, just kind of always looks like he has Bell's palsy. So I feel like that, if that's an indication of anything, like, my career is skyrocketing. I'm super excited about it. But no, I'm fine. I'm doing all good. I'm on the medication. My face should be back to normal in some time. Thank you for all reaching out and sending kind words and everything. It really is mostly comical to me because it's just that half of my face doesn't work. There's no pain. There's nothing associated. It's one of the more ridiculous things that ever happened to me. But thank you for reaching out. I appreciate you all. You're so amazing. Okay, I've talked enough. Now, I'm going to tell you who's on the show tonight. Her name's Katie Porter. We're friends. We're friends from high school. And she is an incredible actor and a singer. And she is also flexing a new muscle that I'm excited to talk to her about tonight here on this show, right now. So welcome to the Come Up, Katie Porter. Hello! How are
Hey!
you?
I'm doing great. How are you? Also, I just want to say thank you for your words on everything from what's going on in the world to your Bell's palsy.
Listen, thank you. Thank you for listening to them. Thank you for how were the
Always.
snacks backstage? Was it
The snacks. Oh yeah, the snacks. Great.
you got to keep
Love
it
them.
like
Count them
like
down.
okay, thanks. Um
Best crap table I've ever been at.
Katie, how are you?
We're making it through. Some days are easier than
Yes.
others, and some days are harder than others. But all things considered, I have my health, my family has their health, and I still have a job and an income, and that's more than a lot of people can say. So I'm very grateful for all of that.
For sure. Katie and I are both from Omaha, Nebraska. Um, and we went to high school together. I thought that people might not believe that, and so I dug in the troves and found some proof.
Oh no. Oh my God.
I
Okay,
would just like to
so
note that in this photo, oh, and then we'll go back to the last one so you can make your note. But in this photo, Katie is actively crying because she's leaving my presence. I just want to know that that's exactly what's happening in that
that's
photo.
exactly what's happening.
Okay,
I
now
attest to
I'll
that.
let you speak on the other one.
Oh, I just wanted to explain the insane makeup that is happening in that. We were doing Alice in Wonderland. It was a show I was actually not in. I was doing makeup for it, and I did all the caterpillar, and you were
I was
Tweedledee,
Tweedledum.
Tweedledum, dumb,
An important
and
note to the story.
yes, and so I, on the last night, that was a picture from closing night. I like put all the different designs I had done on my own face, and it looks like that. Looks a little worse than I remember it being, but
It's you're multifaceted.
okay.
So we also have another experience that's similar to that. Katie and I did Once on This Island Junior, which was my first show. Was that your first musical ever?
No, no, it was not actually. I did the Wizard of Oz at the same theater, at the Rose Theater
Mhm.
in Omaha, when I was in third grade, I think. And I was a munchkin, which was hilarious because
Oh,
I
and
was
you did the
already super,
main
super
stage.
tall.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I
everyone.
did.
Katie Porter booked main stage before she did the class in which they had to put you in the show. Just to be clear, she's a booker, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm a booker. What can I say? Book me last all the time. I think I sang a hymn for my audition.
Oh, nice.
That sounds right. And yes, I was one of the Lollipop Guild
Nice.
munchkins.
And then we
So,
did Once on This Island Junior,
and
in
then we did
which
Once on this Island
I
Junior.
was Agua God of Water
Yeah,
in all my glory.
all your glory.
Uh, and T Moon. Katie was my T Moon.
Yes,
Yes.
and I was T Moon, which is probably a good thing because this was the junior version of Once on This Island, which, if you're not familiar with the junior version of Once on This Island, takes out any mention of race.
Yeah.
Um, so we had, I would say, a good 85% of the people, or maybe more than that, honestly, were white.
Yes.
Um,
It was like me and
it,
you. We were the black people.
I think you're right.
No, like
That's right,
yeah.
actually.
Well, and that's the okay. So people always come on my horse. I'm like, blah, blah, diversity, blah. But here's the thing, and here's why it's important at all levels, is because that like I shouldn't have been able to do that show and come out of it knowing that it wasn't about race. You know what I mean? Like that show specifically
Right,
exists for that purpose, to have that
right,
conversation. Written by white folks, yes. However, addressing a very specific conversation within black households and
yeah,
society.
yeah,
And
oh
so
yeah,
to be able to do that show at that age, at this space that's supposed to be teaching me not only theater, but how it applies to culture, I think it's important that we as artists like are always thinking about how our work is culturally coming off to the world. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I we talked about this a couple days ago where I was like, I fully did not know that that show dealt with race until many, many, many years later. Like I was a full adult
Same.
when I did that because I was always just like, oh, I love this show. Like it has some music, but I'd only ever listened to the junior version, the version that we did
Hmm.
when we were in sixth grade or whatever. So I was like, oh, I know all the songs. And then I was watching it on Broadway, the revival, super great revival, which was honestly one of the best theater experiences
Just
ever.
amazing. Just an amazing
So
show.
good. But I was like, oh, I I had no idea there was this whole thing about, not only race, but, specifically skin color and light skinned folks and dark skinned folks, all of that. So, yeah, I understand on some level why the junior version does not deal with that,
Totally.
but I also think that it would be totally valid for it to deal with that also because
Right.
I think it's important that kids know about this too, you
Or,
know?
if well, one, like, yes, like at what point is a child ready to have conversation about like that's a weird nuanced conversation as
Right.
well, but like also
Yes.
then junior another show. If you put out the
Right.
sci-fi and all these kids sign up and you got two black kids and you still sitting in that room and you're like, yeah, maybe we should give it a shot anyway. That's also a problem, folks. And that happens
Yeah.
more often than not. So like just pull it together,
Yeah.
people. I just need us to pull it
Yeah.
together.
I
Anyway.
agree.
So speaking of pulling it together, you lived in LA for a while. Did you live like in
I
LA
sure
proper?
did.
What does that mean? Like,
I
how
did.
how does it even work? Like, what's the difference between Los Angeles and Beverly Hills?
um, so okay. So basically, I mean Beverly Hills I would say still exists in LA proper. I would say LA proper takes out about 10-ish miles of, space from, East LA, which is east of downtown,
Mhm.
to the beach. To probably, I would say Santa Monica is probably about far northwest as you would go. It's definitely as far west as you can go because then you hit the ocean. But then you start getting up into Malibu and all of that. And I'm sure that there are some people who will be like, I'm from the Valley, I'm from LA. So it's, the definition is loose. But
So
I lived
so it's almost
in
like Chicago. Everybody's like, I'm from Chicago, and they're like, well, actually, I'm from Evanston. And it's like, well, then you're not from Chicago.
well, yeah. I mean, there's like some neighborhoods that you would be like, okay, yes, you live in Los Angeles basically, but then there are other neighborhoods where you're like, it takes a full like 3 hours in traffic to get to you. So
Sure. So no.
I don't know, not so much. But yes, I lived in Koreatown, the neighborhood Koreatown, which is like smack dab in the middle of LA proper,
Yeah.
for 4.5 years after graduating from the University of Southern California, which is also in Los Angeles. And yeah, loved it.
What's
I just wanted to be a sunshine girl.
well, what's super exciting to me about your time in LA is that you were able to like actively work in musical theater, which I thought was
Yeah.
so like, which I feel like is rare. I feel like I don't see people having as much success as you did post your college life in LA. I was super
Oh,
proud and happy.
well, thank you.
It was great. I mean, you were working
Um,
consistently, and I know that like
yeah.
what like it's hard. Like there's no real litmus scale of success or whatever, especially in this industry. Who knows? But like you were booking jobs, you were making connections, working with people, and it was super cool. So what was it like to like navigate that world? Because that's the avenue that you and I both kind of live in pretty happily. It's like what was that like?
Yeah. So the funny thing was is that I've basically wanted to live in New York my whole life. I like in eighth grade I was like, I'm gonna go to NYU, I'm gonna live in the village, I'm gonna live my best rent life. Like all of that. I was ready when I was age 12, basically, to live in New York. And then I did not get into New York University. And I applied to both UCLA and USC. And got into both, but didn't get a lot of money from UCLA, and so it came down to USC or Des Moines, Iowa, and I was like, you know what? Do I want to learn how to be an actress in LA where there's all this? It may not be like a theater town necessarily, but there's so much of the industry there, or in Des Moines, Iowa, which is a more focused program. And ultimately, I chose LA because, you know, I was 17.
Right. Right. What large decisions we're making at such an interesting moment in our lives. Like I had no right as a 17-year-old to be like, where do I want to live to start my career in the arts? Like that's such a
Right.
like what?
I know. It's a wild decision to make at such a young age of your life when you are not even like an adult and you haven't lived on your own and all of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, going out to LA, like I loved my time at USC, but I was coming up sort of against the same thing when I was a senior in college, being like, all right, as soon as I graduate, I'm going to move to New York. I'm going to, you know, do the whole get up at 5 a.m. non-ec life there. But then I had a very long conversation with one of my professors who basically was like, you know what, I think that you have, your friends are here, because most of my friends at the time were staying in Los Angeles, and you have all your teachers here, you have your mentors here, and New York will always be there for you. So I think based on, you know, our conversations in the past and how you've been doing in class and what I think that you want, I would suggest maybe staying in LA just for a year and see if you like it, and then reevaluate if you want to go to New York after there. And then what ended up happening is I almost stayed for almost 5 years after that. Who knew? Because the theater community in LA is super, super cool. Not a lot of people, obviously, not a lot of people know about it. Oh yes, there's a picture of me doing a wonderful production of Into the Woods with my good friend Taylor Wesselman, who owns a theater company out there. And
she played 3 roles. 3 roles.
I played four roles.
Oh, 4. She did 4, everyone. Like, let's talk about it.
Not all at the same time. I was, you know, a swing, basically. So I covered The Witch, Baker's Wife, and then in our particular production, Cinderella and Rapunzel were doubled. It was very much based.
I just want to clarify for the people. She just said that she was a swing for Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods, in which she learned The Witch, The Baker's Wife, and both Cinderella and Rapunzel as one track. She's going to say that like it was easy, because apparently learning 4 Sondheim roles is very easy for Katie Porter, but that is what she just said. For you people that were like, she couldn't have said that. Like, yes, that's what she said. Go on.
Yeah, it was wild. It was truly wild. And it actually, you know, I also I was in orchestra for a long time, and I played the viola. And so much of playing the viola is finding your place within the rest of the orchestra. You often don't have the melody and all of that, but I learned so many musical skills from being in orchestra for so long. And so doing Into the Woods, where I had to learn all of these tracks and had to find my place. And, you know, Into the Woods is one of those shows that when you're just listening to it, it doesn't sound as musically difficult as like Sunday in the Park or A Little Night Music and all of that stuff. But it is, I mean, it's one of those shows that there's like basically no vamps. You have like 2 bars of time in between each person, and you better come in on time, otherwise you're going to throw off literally everyone else. And that, I mean, that's the case with pretty much any show, but particularly with Into the Woods, because there's so many, you know, one-line pop-ups. It, you know, sometimes I was on stage and I was like, who am I? Who am I tonight? I don't know.
What track is happening? I don't know. Everyone hope.
What track is happening? Yeah. So
yeah.
But yeah, so I got, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. No, you go.
I was just going to say that doing theater in LA was a great training ground, where there was just kind of everything from big regional houses where I did 2 shows at a theater out in Thousand Oaks, which is like 40 miles outside of LA, in the Valley, which was an 1,800 seat theater, huge theater. And then doing Into the Woods, which was a super small, intimate, like 50 seat house, I think. So it really ran the gamut of what I was able to kind of get the whole regional theater experience by being in LA. And I also was able to do the Hollywood Fringe Festival, which is a whole other experience.
Yeah,
because my roommate wrote a musical. She wrote 2 musicals, actually. This particular musical for the Hollywood Fringe Festival was a parody of The Bachelor, musical parody of The Bachelor. And putting that whole thing up in, oh God, it was such a small amount of time. And like having to do the whole, you have 90 minutes to load in, do your show, and load out. It's just, all of that stuff was crazy.
yeah.
But
Well, and
super informative.
where did that happen? Like, because when we did Chicago Friends, we were performing in the attic of a church, and I sweat so much that like my shirt was like soaked. Like my shirt was soaking wet. By the time I walked on stage, my first entrance,
Yeah,
I was already sweating.
yeah, that's right. I mean, so the way it works is like, I mean, Hollywood covers a pretty large amount of mileage, but they're all roughly within, I'd say, like 5 miles of each other. There are some theaters you can like walk to from other theaters, but some you have to like take a car, which is okay in LA because everybody has a car.
Right.
But so we were actually like probably a little outside of like the main epicenter. There was like one theater that was like the main space, I guess, but it was just a little outside in Hollywood. And we came like 30 minutes before while the other show was going just to get all of our stuff, and we had to practice loading in and loading out all the time so we could get it down to like 10 minutes. Yeah, it was a great experience, and it was cool to just see, it's a show that probably would have just attracted like our millennial friends, but because there were so many people of all ages doing Fringe, like there would be like 60-year-olds in the audience and having a great time.
For sure.
And that was super cool. It definitely made me feel like I was more connected to the LA theater community specifically.
Yeah.
So.
But you moved. You made the move. You finally lived the dream. You went to New York, and then a pandemic hit, but we'll get there. Why did you decide to make the move? Like, what was the moment for you?
Well, part of it was kind of it sort of just fell into place. I've been thinking that I was going to move to New York. This was 2018, I guess. I was like, okay, I've been here. I think I maybe need to make the move to New York sooner rather than later because I don't want to get too settled down in one place and then feel like I can't move. And then it happened that both of my roommates who I had been living with were moving in with their boyfriends. And then like a few weeks after that, I got cast in the national tour of A Christmas Carol through Nebraska Theater Caravan. So I basically was going to have this space of time where I didn't have an apartment anymore and was, able to come home. And it was, since Christmas Carol was obviously during the holidays, my parents were off of work, they're both teachers, and so they could help me move to New York as well. And so I sublet a place from a friend for 2.5 months and then went on tour and then came home for 5 days and then went to New York.
Nice.
And it was just kind of one of those things that just kind of the plans kind of started falling into place themselves once it kind of got into my head that I wanted to move. And it was really, really hard to leave LA because it definitely feels like a second home to me now.
So
yeah.
what have you noticed as the big major differences? You've now lived, even for a short portion of time, still counts. I feel like living in New York like after like a week or so, like is a taxing experience. So like you get to
Yeah.
say you've lived. Um, so
Yes.
like what are the major differences or the compare contrast?
I mean, here's my super pithy explanation of LA and New York, which hopefully does not offend anyone. I say it with love. But what I've always said is that New Yorkers are miserable and love to tell people that they're miserable, and Angelinos are miserable and love to tell people that everything is going great. It's just kind of that kind of it, for me encapsulates the mindset of both of those places. And again, I say it with love. I don't mean to be like everyone's like a terrible, miserable person in New York. It's more of just like people are. I mean, that bluntness that people talk about is very true. But what it also comes out of that is there's a lot of just like innate camaraderie among New Yorkers where people are super helpful and kind a lot
Yeah.
of the time.
Well, I have a friend,
Like,
Robert Bernardi, who lifetime New
mm-hmm.
Yorker director, and we were in rehearsal one time, and somebody had mentioned how New Yorkers are rude, and he was like, no, no, we're not rude.
No.
He was like, we're not rude. He was like, I have somewhere to go. You have somewhere to go. If someone's
Yeah.
stopping me, that's probably not a good reason, or like, or they need like if they
Yeah.
need help, I need to figure it out. But like, no, like I'm being courteous to you by not taking your time because I know you have somewhere to go because we're in New York. And,
Yes.
and I was like, that makes sense. That checks out. That was definitely the vibe I got when I
Absolutely.
was living there.
Yeah. It's not rudeness. It's honesty. It's
Yeah.
which sometimes can be harsh, I guess, um, but I love that. I feel like there's no bullshit, and that's great. On a on a less abstract level, I mean, the thing about New York is that you realize very quickly how much you treasure personal space. I
Mm,
know everyone says that, but excuse me, it's something that you just don't realize until you get there and you live there for a while, where it's just things as simple as going to the pharmacy, going to the grocery store. You're just in contact with thousands of people, like truly thousands of people. And, I'm sure everyone saw all the crazy photos from Trader Joe's during the pandemic where there was like a line outside of Trader Joe's just to get in. Sometimes that happens even when there's not a global pandemic.
so just be
Thankfully, not
prepared,
the Trader
people.
Joe's.
Just
Yeah,
be
be
ready.
prepared. You never know. I mean, you figure out what days are like less crazy, and you figure out, okay, if I go when school's in and it's in the middle of the afternoon, it's a little less crazy and stuff like that. But just everything is packed tight all the time. Whereas LA has, also billions of people, but because it's so spread out and everyone is in a car, it's like, yeah, it sucks being in traffic. A lot of people ask me, would you rather be stuck in traffic or would you rather take the subway? And they're both good and they're both bad.
Sure.
um, they both have major downsides, that one's not really better than the other necessarily. But I guess the one upside to being stuck in traffic is that you're in your own space. So you can, sing at the top of your lungs or call a friend or any of that stuff, which, people still do on the subway. But
so, so how has your artistic life shifted? How is the grind changed from the LA life to the New York life?
I think that um, the the quote unquote hustle, as people like to say,
Hmm.
is more in your face in New York. And that's definitely not to say that it doesn't happen in LA. I actually hate when people are like, oh, like you just hang out in LA and you don't do anything. No, people are working their fucking asses off in LA too. It's just, again, it's kind of that personality thing about what people show and what
Hmm.
people don't show. But I think definitely in New York, the hustle and bustle of the city kind of makes you feel like you're going, 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 going all the time. And so that was a little hard for me to adjust to, honestly, because I work hard, I have a pretty hard work ethic and all of that, but there's always kind of a constant pressure of, especially when you're waiting outside of Pearl at 6 a.m. and you're, the 100th person in line, and you're like, oh, I should have gotten here earlier. And, that does not happen in LA.
Mm.
EPAs are super chill in LA. You can show up at 8 a.m. and get seen. And so that was definitely a perspective change. And was hard for a while, because then I kind of thought that maybe, I'm not working hard enough as the rest of these artists that are here. And if I can make it there, I can make it anywhere. It's kind of true, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
because it really makes you figure out what is important to you and what you want to try to do, and what you want your focus to be, basically, in your artistic life, because there's just so many things to choose from that it can get so overwhelming. And so that was kind of where I was heading in year 2 before the pandemic hit. I was just trying to really focus on what I wanted to do with my artistic life and artistic career. So
Yeah. So, what was crystallizing for you in that moment, and how have things changed now that there's a global pandemic? As far as what the steps you were going to take next, and what you were kind of looking to get out of, because we talk so often about how, like, our career is so hard, because at this point a lot of people we went to college with are like doctors, or like, or they're doing
right.
whatever their thing is, and they've got a family, maybe, which sounds terrible to me because I ain't trying to pay nobody bills.
Yeah.
But like, it's it seems like everyone's done all these things, and for us it's like, and even especially now, it's like, oh, like, sometimes, I mean, part of the reason my face is failing is because I'm probably stressed about the fact that I'm wondering what's next. How do we move forward? And is everything that I've done for naught?
Yeah. 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 Yes, all of the above that. I think what I was realizing at the beginning of this year was that I was just doing things because I felt like I had to, rather than I actually wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was forcing myself to go to auditions that I didn't really care about, and then beating myself up if I didn't get a call back, and, you know, looking at classes that I wasn't interested in and listening to advice of people that don't really know me well, all of this stuff. Because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and that's really hard in an artistic career because there's no, like, you do this step and then you get there, and then you do this step and you get there. It's just kind of a free for all. And so that's been super hard for me basically since I graduated college. And so basically what I was realizing was, I was like, I still want to be an actor. I still want to do this, but I don't want to, trying to think of an eloquent way to say this. I don't want to have a career for somebody else.
Mm.
I want to be in charge of my own career, if that makes sense. And that
Yeah.
means, and like, of course, there's going to be things that you have to do as an actor that you don't want to do. That's just having a job, But overall, I was like, I don't want to have to answer to anybody. I want to do things that I'm passionate about. I want to work with people that I'm passionate about. And I want to try new things. I want to basically find my love for the art again, because I think I had been focusing so much on the business side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And while the business side is important because we got to eat, it's so easy to get trapped in that world and get in the, like, okay, well, what, will I be more marketable if I, change my hair, if I lose 50 pounds, if I do, all of that stuff, when it's just like so much more. The whole reason we got into this is finding a way to express ourselves and express our stories. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing.
Well, and
So,
and why do we have to choose? Like, I feel like I was in a similar spot where I was like, I'm finally at the point in my career where I can think about what I want to do and not just accept jobs to pay the bills. I'm like, why aren't there enough jobs that both scratch my itch as an artist, make me feel good as a person that's doing this work for a specific purpose, and paying me? Like, why is it so hard to get that trifecta?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right? I mean, no,
It's
and
hard.
yeah, well, and that's what I think is interesting about the moment we're in is that I think one, people got time. We all got time to ask these questions right now.
Yes. Yes.
And so, and so everybody's kind of in this space where we're like, question that I mean, I need a lot of D, and we want to know what's happening because
Yeah.
we're very confused. Um,
Yeah. And I mean, I sorry to answer the second part of your question
no, you
about
go.
how has that changed since the pandemic has happened, is
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, all of the terrible, awful things that are going on aside, to be perfectly honest, this has been such, like, I feel like I'm able to breathe for once as far as my artistic career goes,
Mm-hmm.
because there isn't the industry business pressure happening right now. What was really helpful was I took a class with an agent in November, and we had a little Zoom meetup maybe like a month and a half ago. And this was back when Broadway's opening date was June 15th or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically said, that's not going to happen. It's probably going to get pushed back to September. And honestly, that's probably not even going to happen. I don't foresee it happening until next year, the beginning of next year. And that honestly was just like, okay, great. So rather than worrying about auditions and all of that stuff that I usually worry about, I'm just going to try to be creative. I'm going to listen to musical soundtracks. I'm going to sing for myself for once and sing songs that I like and not worry about, oh, will this go well in the audition or blah, 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 all that stuff. And I'm going to start writing and all of this stuff. And so it's just been super creatively fulfilling time, even on the days where I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to do anything today. You know what? That's fine.
That counts. That counts.
You know?
I was talking to somebody and I was like, this word has been placed on my heart to share with you. And they're like, okay. And I was like, you haven't lost any time. They're like, no time has been lost because we're all in this moment together. We're all, especially in the like theatrical realm, like we're all in this space of, I don't know what's happening next. And like so many organizations are running multiple different directions, trying to figure it out. And you know, and it's all unfounded. Like it's all like, there's no data to back up any of the decisions anyone's making right now.
Right.
So it's, you know, I think this is a really good time. I think it can be more scary for folks that were probably in the midst of their career and everything kind of halted. But I think especially
100%.
for the folks that are just graduating or that are heading into senior year, like it may seem the most scary there because it's like, what do I do when I graduate? And it's like, good thing is you don't have to think about that for another year. Like you just earned a whole year to see what happens and then jump in when it's time. And be ready to go because you've learned everything through school as it's been changing, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What a crazy time.
I know. It's a weird time. It's that's why I've been telling people it's just like it's a weird, scary, hard time.
Okay, I have a question for you. Yeah. Oh wait, no, you had one more thing to say, and then I'll ask.
No. Nope, okay. That was basically.
Well, my question was, when you are doing Zoom calls and whatnot, do you look at yourself or at the person that you're talking to? Like, what's your protocol?
I look at myself. I'm always like, what does my face look like? Is this a good angle?
I find that I do too.
It's so hard because you're just like acutely aware of, you're like, oh, that's what I look like when I laugh or like when I think of something, you know, and all of this. So yeah, it's so hard not to look at myself. Even when I do the gallery view where everyone's the same size, I still end up looking at myself, and it's just I feel a little vain.
Listen, we should always know that we're the most interesting thing in the space. That's how you book. That's how you book.
That's great advice, kids.
So yeah. So you mentioned that you've started doing some writing. Yeah. What are you writing, Katie? What are you working on?
So I'm working on, I guess the correct term is a teleplay because it is a screenplay for television, about myself. Write what you know. All the white guys do it, so I might as well do it too.
Period.
Um, and right now it's a half hour comic dramedy. I mean, I definitely wrote it for a streaming service format where
Some
there's
might
not
call it a
act
slice of
breaks.
life, but I hate that phrase, so we're not
Yeah.
going to.
I don't know. That's a good term for it, though.
That is a good term for it.
Life has drama and life has comedy.
Mm-hmm.
It encapsulates everything. Um, but yes, I had this idea for a while, and then I sort of started writing it back in February, and then the pandemic hit, and I was like, great, I have all the time in the world now to write this. And I didn't really used to be like a movie person, and then when I moved to New York, and I got my AMC A-list subscription, and that was the cheapest night out in New York, where you're like, great, this is already paid for. I'll pay like $8 for popcorn with my friends to split, because of course popcorn is like $1 million.
Right.
But I was just seeing so much film and realizing how much I loved it, and watching a lot of television. And I mean, I think right now television is really pushing the boundaries as far as diversity and representation and what kind of stories we're seeing. And especially now, I'm in Nebraska right now. I came home from New York just to help out my parents, and I did quarantine myself for 2 weeks. I'm a good citizen, but I was watching a lot of television. I was not reckless, but I watched Fleabag and I watched Shrill because I'm one of those people who like never watches shows when they're popular. My joke is always that I fall in love with shows 5 years after they're popular.
Same.
So just watching all of this great television and just being like, oh my God, it really is kind of the Wild West now, where you can completely buck the format that has existed for like, oh, this is a comedy and this is a drama and this is blah 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 and all this stuff, and even the very strict like, oh, a network television show has to be 22 minutes and 30 seconds or something and leave space for commercials. Now with streaming platforms, they can be as long as like 45 minutes, And so anyway, sorry, this is a very long-winded response.
No, it's great.
To say that I've just been very creative. I just was finally like, okay, we're going to write this. And it's been a huge process, but also super fun. I have all my little screenwriting, YouTube channels that I've subscribed to just to be like, how do I do this? And watching a lot of television and reading a lot of pilot scripts. And, I like to think that I'm not like a complete novice, just because obviously being in the industry and being an artist, I have an idea of like story structure and all of that sort of stuff, the fundamentals, I guess. But there's so much that I've just learned writing this in the past 2.5 months or so, that I'm sure if I went back and read the very, very first draft that I wrote of this, I'd be like, wow, this is garbage. But,
I just find it so interesting that even though you lived in LA, New York and a pandemic is what brought you to TV and film.
I know. I mean, it was something that I think that I never, because I think when I was in high school, I basically put all my eggs in the musical theater basket, where I was like, this is how I'm going to get my start. This doesn't mean that I'm never going to do television and film, but because I have talents in singing and, acting through song and all of that. And also, probably, to be honest, part of me at the time was like, I'm not the typical TV or movie actress because I'm, mixed and I'm plus size and all of that. And in 2010, you didn't really see that on television. It's
Mhm.
changed so
It's
much in the
changed a
last 10
lot.
years.
It has changed a lot. It's
Yeah.
kind of shocking how
So
much it has, like in such a short amount
I
of time.
right. I know it's crazy. It's crazy. It's just how many of the like TV shows now that we regard as like the best television in years of like, like Mad Men and Breaking Bad and all of that has happened within the last 10 years.
Well, but what's interesting is
Um,
that I think that television in particular, not film, television in particular, has done the best job of changing and really doing the work of diversity and diverse sizes, stories, colors, everything. Um,
Absolutely.
but like theater has talked about it the most, which I find fascinating. Is that we're always having these large conversations in these theatrical institutions about how much we need to do the work and why we do the work, but then just like don't, and then TV does, and I think while yes, there is work involved in, like, of course there are people that have to get seats at the table to provide stools and steps for other people to get up there. Like once you do that, like it happens. Like, and it's I've found like making the switch into working in TV in like the last 2 years on the casting side, so not like as in it, but pretty in it. That like it, stuff just kind of happens in TV. Like,
Yeah.
like people will be like, "Oh, you think so? Yeah, sure, whatever." And like, and the unfortunate reality is that while there are some completely obscene, terrible people that like have opinions that you are awful, that happens everywhere. Like in most cases, like, and this is part of the problem. Like, folks just aren't thinking about it actively, and so it takes you to be like, "Hey, did you hear what you just said?" Or or like, let's
Yeah.
actually, when you talk about that person's hair, like maybe you should think of it this way, and or not at
Yeah.
all. I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
But so like it's just, those conversations are just so normal in those spaces, and there so often aren't people of color to say anything, which is why why folks need to like step up and say things as well. But also like it's just, but if you do say a thing in my experience, most times people are like, oh, realizing that we should fix that, or like, oh, that's a problem, or they're like, oh well, our agency said that we can't change that, so that's not changing, sorry about it, but we feel awkward about it, like
Right.
not great, but a response, like and at
Yeah.
least acknowledgement of like that's incorrect and we should fix it. Yeah, and then actually doing something, like taking actionable steps, I think is something that I've seen that I sadly just haven't seen from a lot of the theatrical spaces that I'm in, which is sad to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's interesting because for so long I feel like television was always looked down upon, where it was like theater was like where the real actors were, and then movies were like, oh, these glamorous movie stars, and they're making a big picture and all of that sort of thing. So I feel like television was kind of left in this place where it was like, well, nobody cares about us anyway, so we might as well do whatever we want
Mm.
and tell these stories we want. I mean, I'm sure some of these like prestige shows that came out would probably have been pitched as movies first because they're told in such a cinematic way. I mean, like fucking Game of Thrones is like basically movie production budgets and all of that. That I'm like, I'm not trying to hold up Game of Thrones as like the most diverse, well represented thing,
Mhm.
because it's not. But I think because it was looked down upon, it opened the door for all of these people that couldn't get their foot in the door in theater spaces or in movie spaces because television wasn't as vaunted until, the last 10 or 20 years. And so, and especially with the advent of social media and YouTube and all of that, it's like that has translated so well with television. And I think theater is still just kind of stuck in this slightly archaic place where it's just like, no, like we're an institution and we have to tell these stories the way they've always been told. And it's always like a huge deal when it's not told in the way that it's always been told. And like, it's always interesting to me where it's like everyone thinks of Hamilton as being like the first rap musical, but it wasn't. I mean, Holler
Mhm.
If You Hear Me was first,
Which was an
and
amazing show. That show was
I
so
haven't
good.
seen it.
It was so good. And I accidentally went on Tupac's birthday because I don't know what days are. And so I was like, hey, do you have rush tickets? And they're like, well, we don't, but the tickets are like half price today. It was in previews, and they're half price
Hmm.
because it was Tupac's birthday. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. It was like that show. Oh my god, was such an experience. So it was
Yeah.
unlike anything I had seen on Broadway up to that point, just because it was so. You can tell when something is made. I had a similar experience in Hamilton, but like still, like the How Have You Heard Me experience was just so like raw and emotional because I feel like even that cast knew that this was not going to survive. You know what I mean? Which
Mm.
which is sad. But I feel,
Yeah.
but that's what I felt was coming from their performances was this feeling of like we got here and we are going to do the damn thing because no one expected us to get here
Yeah.
and we're here and I you could feel that from the stage, which is super powerful to me. Sorry, I did not mean to
Yeah.
hijack that. You said, "However, you hear me." That show
No,
hits me in
no.
a place. Oh,
No, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting that it's like, and I'll say this, I love Hamilton,
mm,
but it is arguably taking a white story and putting people of color in the place to tell the story in a very inventive way. Whereas Holler If You Hear Me was like specifically about is a black story
mhm.
essentially, and so
Written by
it's
white
just
folks. So there were some things in the script that I was like, I can tell that this is a white man who watched like Do the Right Thing like 15 times,
sure, sure,
and then
right.
and then was like, I can write that, and so
I get
that
it.
was kind of a problem. But what was so I'm so
Yeah.
sorry, and then I will let you finish your point. What
No,
was
no, no.
so
Go ahead.
incredible about the way that they used Tupac's music in that show. That's the thing that really struck me is that typically in a jukebox musical, it feels like they're like, oh, we're having a conversation and now there's a song. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
But the way that they used his music, like they would be in the midst of a conversation and then all of a sudden it would sound kind of rhythmic. And then you'd be like, oh my God, we've been in a rap for a minute.
Mm,
but you have no idea. Like it just kind of,
right.
I remember specifically this moment. Oh my God, I can't. I have to Google it because I can't sit here and not know this one was Tanya Pinkins. I got it before I got to Google.
Oh, yes.
I got it
Go ahead.
before I got to Google. So Tanya Pinkins was in Holler If You Hear Me, and there was a moment where she was like reflecting on losing her son to a gunshot, and she started speaking on the stoop, and that's when I just that moment it's one of those beautiful moments in theater that sits with me to
Mm,
this day. And so
hmm.
I wish that show got the flowers it deserved, but now it just did on
Yeah.
the come up. I'm so sorry. You continue. You speak your words.
Oh, no. I mean, basically, you made my point for me where it's just like, I feel like there are still just these archaic institutions in place in theater that is preventing new, diverse artists getting their feet in the door and actually like having a lasting impact, where it's just like I think Hamilton happened and we were all like, oh my god, great, and like I'm so happy that that show is still selling out and doing so well, obviously before the pandemic.
Right.
um but I feel like there was a little bit, and this happens at the Oscars all the time too, where it's like there'll be some big tent pole film for people of color, and we're all like, oh my god, thank God we don't have to worry about representation anymore. And then we have 5 more years where all the nominees are white, or it's very stereotypical stories like Green Book, like being told, and all of this stuff. And we have the same conversation again, and it's just like I don't think people realize that it's like it takes active work for many, many, many years until it becomes second nature and we don't have to worry about it anymore. And I don't think television is there yet, but I think it's definitely more in a place where it's, there's, and just because there's also so many channels where people
Mm-hmm.
can watch television, where it's not just on your actual television screen, it can be on all these different streaming platforms, it can be on YouTube, it can be on all these different things. So it's all of these different stories getting told, whereas it's still pretty limited in theater and it's still pretty limited also in movie making as well.
Yeah.
So
Katie,
that was a long tangent.
We have talked to these people for almost an hour.
Oh my God.
That's the longest interview in Come Up history. Longest interview in Come Up history. I know, that's just how we talk. We always call Katie for one thing, and then we end up talking for like 7 hours and watching entire show choir shows of our past together on the phone.
It's true.
You'll have to come back, and we'll just keep talking to you about, things, because you're awesome, man.
Yes.
And the audience has spoken. They like you. Yeah. So Katie Porter, everyone. Yes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I love you so much.
I love you. Hang out backstage, and I'll come check in with you once I wrap this baby. Woo!
Yes.
All right, folks. That was Katie. We talked for a long time. That's just how we operate. I'm sorry. Thanks for sticking out if you stuck around live. Next week on The Come Up, we're going to be chatting with my friend, Jen Bosworth. Jen is actually in the midst of driving across the country to LA right now from Chicago to also continue her career as a writer. So, we've got a little theme here on The Come Up for you. It's called Fantastic People That Know How to Write and Are About to Change the World. So, thank you. Be kind to each other. Truly kind. Wash your hands. Love you.